Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are going to look into learning itself. So let's split it up into segments. First, we can talk about why most people don't learn or end up learning wrong. Secondly, we can talk about what I recommended to you specifically in the context of League. And lastly, I will give you some extra tricks or methods on learning. So let's get right into it. Most people's learning goes badly due to three main factors. The first one being excuses like that was a dumb mistake, I wasn't focused, and so on. Not spending enough time or not having deliberate practice, which both end up in insufficient good practice, is the second factor. And the last factor is complacency. So like driving a car, we get used to the level we are at and then we stay there. We don't actually improve at our driving unless we get challenged or something, or we actually try to improve in some way. But most of us don't need to try to improve because we can just autopilot it. The important thing to understand is that 99% of people don't really practice well and a lot at the same time. They might do one or the other, but they for sure don't do both. Therefore, if you can do both, at least decently, then you will for sure be top 1% in anything you choose to do. So what can we really do about this? We will realize that things like the 10,000 hour rule don't really apply, because unless we want to be the best of the best, it's not really necessary. So we can instead say that it takes something like 2,000 hours at most after applying the 80-20 rule, where you learn 80% of the content, 20% of the effort or time. And that makes a lot more sense for us. Honestly, the number should be even a lot lower than that if we include that both of these numbers, the 10,000 hour rule and the 2,000 hour rule, aren't, or well, the 2,000 hour rule we just made up, they both don't really use optimal practice, they just use like okay practice. That's why we will focus on having good practice and not a lot of practice, since that will save us a lot of time. Next up, we can lay out the plan for the key stages to improvement. So let's say that the key stages to improvement are repeated attempts with effort, valid environment, timely feedback, and not getting complacent. We will get repeated attempts and a valid environment for playing solo queue. So that's kind of taken care of. And feedback will be both our performance and the outcome of the game. But we run into an issue. We want the feedback to be timely, right? So here we need to add another layer. Let's zoom in on the core parts of League, for example, wave management or fights or something, and let's break those down into the small parts that make them up, right? So we want to deliberately develop, for example, a visualization skill, which will allow us to do exercises with it and actually get feedback on time, because League is otherwise pretty bad with timely feedback. So yeah. And lastly, we will be pushing ourselves to play just outside of our comfort zone, so something like 20% faster or more focused or whatever. And the key there is to improve even at the cost of some LP, because in the long term, it'll benefit us more. So with this, we have a general plan. So how are we going to apply it now? Because as we all know, application of what you already learned is pretty much the hardest thing in League. So for this, we're going to need enough knowledge to self-correct so that we know if we're doing stuff right or wrong, right? So a lot of this we can get from educational content, whatever. And then we want to learn with understanding. So this goes without saying, but first of all, we are going to remove all of the distractions like music and whatever. You don't really want to play with music and whatever unless you're kind of a fun player like me. The visualization here, though, will be, for example, if we talk about wave management, okay? I'll just outline it for you in that scenario. Then in other scenarios, you can outline it yourself. So we will imagine that every auto attack's damage or spell's damage or whatever else, generally just damage to the wave, will move the imaginary line where we imagine that the next wave will be when the next two waves meet, right? So if I auto attack, the wave gets moved a bit to the opponent's side and a bit to the opponent's side. And if the enemy champion auto attacks or uses spells or whatever, then it gets moved to my side. And eventually when the minions are low enough, the wave is just in the middle because the waves are going to die before the next waves come, right? But that's a really good thing to visualize, for the simple reason that that gives us instant feedback, right? So we get feedback in terms of if the waves are where we want them to be precisely. So if we're off by, say, like a centimeter or two, that's something we can work on, right? That's something that we can see, okay, well, I did something wrong. But for example, wave management in terms of saying, okay, I want the wave to be in a good state, and then you memorize like whatever, I don't know, skill capture or something teaches you, like, oh yeah, just hit this wave a bit and then like have a minion advantage and then like push and kind of get a feel and do something. First of all, we're telling you to just get a feel for stuff. Second of all, we're telling you to kind of improvise. And third of all, we're telling you to memorize. Like, we want you to memorize a pattern instead of understanding why the pattern emerges and how it appears and whatever. So the important thing is, because then you're very adaptable. So it's really important that instead of learning, okay, so I should do this and this and this, you should learn, okay, if I do this, then this happens. So how can I use that? And then if you link everything together, it'll be much better than if you learn things one by one. For example, most people in higher elos, they will realize in lane that, okay, it's good to slow push. And then comes minute, I don't know, 20, and suddenly everyone is killing every wave as soon as they get to it. Even though there's no reason why there wouldn't be at least some scenarios where they could slow push and do something with it. But most of the people end up just killing the waves after that. Because they learned in lane that they need to do it. But then after lane, because they didn't learn with understanding, but rather learned more in a memorization context, they stopped doing it. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. With a good control of that, we will then upgrade it by figuring out what each spot represents by finding common patterns. And we can do that by just understanding it, or we can watch educational content, we'll figure that out, and we can just apply the same approach. After that, we should be good on that part, and then we can move on to something else, like visualizing spell ranges or something. For example, spells usually have 3 ranges: undodgeable range, maybe dodgeable range, and free dodge range. By that I mean, if you're close enough to the enemy, then the spells are going to be pretty much undodgeable, or if the rain is blocking you or something, they're going to be like red zones where you legit cannot dodge the spell. And there are like yellow zones where you can maybe dodge it, maybe not. And there are like green zones where you're most likely to dodge the spell unless you're like AFK or something, I don't know. Or you get like predicted completely. So by breaking down our learning process in such a way where the result we are looking for is something more tangible and directly correlated to what we are doing, we should have a much easier time improving than by looking at the result of, for example, laning. Like, did I get CS, or did I win the game, or did I get a kill or something? Like, those things are much harder to use as a feedback loop. So next up, for the tricks and methods part of the video, I'll mention a few cool things. For example, for tackling new concepts and stuff, you need to think about, there is a brain focus and diffuse method, where brain focus state is a more tightly woven state for your brain to think in, but it has trouble adapting, while the diffuse method is a state of relaxation where new ideas have an easier time establishing themselves. So the known examples of this being done are when people hold something in their hand, and it's like, for example, metal balls or something, and then they fall asleep slowly and the thing falls on the floor and wakes them up. And because they got so relaxed, it's a lot easier for the brain to think about new ideas. So after that, I have one for procrastination. So even in League this happens. So people just procrastinate. I'll learn this or practice this later or whatever. So there's the Pomodoro technique, where you practice for half an hour or something with a timer, then take a break after that when you do something enjoyable and repeat. So here the key is to focus on working on the thing for that specific time range, but you shouldn't focus on, for example, if you're going to do like the boring CS drill or something, or like working on your mouse accuracy or something, you just do your 30 minutes, not until you actually achieve your goal. Because otherwise there's no point doing a technique. It's just like, okay, just do it. So yeah. And then for mouse accuracy, I can recommend Aim Booster. It's something I've tried before and I think it's pretty decent. But not like the regular modes. What I like is if you set it to practice mode and then adjust target sizes to a low number and turn the speed down, you can develop a lot smoother movement because it forces you to move between the targets and to also be accurate. And with that, it can help you a lot with just being more accurate in general in League, because it's kind of like Aim Booster where you only really move your mouse on a small part of the screen. And then I also have one for flow state. For flow state, what I recommend is that you find the time of day where your brain works the best, and also some of your common triggers. For example, most common ones would be like challenge or passion or curiosity or something. And those things can help you really focus in on the game. So for me, though, I'll say that for me personally, what helps me a lot is when the game is playable. So it's like a challenging game, but it's still like winnable and playable and I can do stuff. Turning chat off and then maybe having like light music where I can like sing along to it or something, because then my brain gets distracted. For example, I like Russian songs because I can sing along to them and then I just relax and it helps me a lot. So yeah, with that, I'll end the video. So thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you learned something new, and comment what you'd like to see next. I'll see you next time.